that stuff. I'm here with Torin and Page Rouse. They're the Walking America couple. Look at those smiles. I love you guys. I absolutely love you guys. And I've been following you. Came really close to me. I'm in Southeast Alabama, in Dothan, Alabama. And y'all it was like when I found you, you were headed out of town. And I was like, and I tried to get a bunch of my people in my church. I have a lady in my church, a former pastor of ours, who has walked across the world. Like her and her partner did like a world journey. It's as intricate as what you're doing. Honestly, it's the same kind of thing. Okay. It's not like they walked across the whole dang world, but it's a ceremonial journey. And so I was trying to get together where we could all go and meet you. You were over in Georgia at that time. And you were heading north, heading out of our area. And I tried to get it together, and I don't know what happened. Something happened that day, and we just didn't, because we were going to chase y'all down. We were going to chase y'all down and honk at you and then pull over on the side of the road. And I have all these drones and stuff, right? One of the businesses I own is a thermal drone business. So I fly a thermal drone and look for animals and help find pets and, wildlife surveys and things like that. So I enjoy that. So anyway, I was going to film us and do a whole story about it, but it's like one of those things. If you ever tried to tell your girlfriend or wife or husband that you were going to buy them roses, but you forgot, I was going to buy you roses, so I was going to come see you, but hey, whatever. Here we are. So look, we've kind of been through some introductions a little bit earlier today when we got together, and to reintroduce each other and ourselves, it seems kind of weird. But let me take an opportunity to introduce myself to you guys. I know that on the screen right now, like I'm flipping you off, right? And I'm making bad faces at you, and I'm doing all kinds of awful things because you can't see me, right? You don't know, okay? So I've got a whole bunch of group of people behind you, and everybody's got a thumbs down, and they're booing you secretly, and you can't hear them. But actually, we all love you and appreciate you. I am a retired Army first sergeant, and I spent a lot of time in the 82nd Airborne Division, jumping out of airplanes and doing all those kinds of crazy fun things that young males do when they have lots of testosterone, right? We go and we do crazy things. And so now I'm retired. I sold body armor to law enforcement for 10 years. I don't do that anymore. One of the things I do now is I talk to people that are heroes of mine. And I have a podcast called Marshall in the Middle, Heroes I Know. And you guys are guests. So yay. Hold on. I got something. I can make it sound. Yeah, I got a cheer. Yeah, it's okay. Background. Yeah, there we go. And so, hey, why don't you guys take an opportunity and introduce yourselves to the audience and tell me about being a Walking America couple. Tell me about that. Whichever one wants to start, go ahead.
We are the Walking America couple. We're walking 12,000 miles between all 50 states. We've walked across 25 states so far, and we've done over 5,500 miles.
So we design segments according to season at this point, so that we're north for the summer and south for the winter. As time's gone on, the segments have gotten a little bit shorter. Our first segment took us about 1,500 miles, 6 months. We did Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. Our second segment was the longest one, and it was about the distance of a coast-to-coast walk. We were just trying to knock out as many states as we could according to season, so we started in Iowa, walked up to Michigan, down to Florida, and finished in North Carolina. And that started in April and ended in March the next year. So it was like 11 months, just over 11 months. And that was a long one. But since then, we've broken them up just a little bit more so that we can make a bit more time for family. We had relatives pass away and friends get married and life continues to go by at home, and we just want to have a little bit more home in our life. So most recently, we've done Wyoming and Montana, North Dakota and South Dakota this summer. Those were 2 segments. And then we just came off of Arkansas and Louisiana, about 500 and something miles between those 2.
Oh, wow. So when you're out there, a lot of times you're staying with people that invite you into their homes. There's got to be some really kind of eclectic kinds of things that you find yourself involved with, right? I mean, one night you could be sleeping behind somebody's shed out back and they're happy that, that to offer you that. And the next minute you're in the Taj Mahal in an upstairs bathroom or bedroom that's never been used before and it's filled with gold, right?
Yeah, that is one of the really jarring contrasts that the walk provides for us. I think Montana was a really great example of this. I think it was like just a few days before we were sleeping in a culvert under the road, like one of those ribbed culverts. And then shortly after, we were invited to sleep at the Ringling Brothers Mansion by the owner of Red Ants Pants, a clothing company that now owns the Ringling Brothers Mansion. So that was quite cool. It's the really nice thing about that is because you're like overcoming these survival obstacles and then you're getting presented with these extravagant luxuries at times. It feels much more rewarding. It means so much more. Even just a hot shower at the end of a week walking through 95 degrees when you are between towns, that can mean so much more than it ever means in normal, conventional life.
So you go to a store and you pick out a pair of shoes to wear on your march or your walk. What brand do you buy?
Before recently, my favorite brand was Scanners, but I haven't done the walk in these yet. But I just got some Hokas from House of Soul in Louisiana. They gifted them to me.
Okay.
And it wound up being a top favorite. I feel very fondly about them so far.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, they've got some nice rugged tread on the bottom and they're mid tops, so ankle support, that's important to us. For me, I'm kind of a picky shoe fit. I probably don't gravitate toward the shoes that I think other people would consider good quality shoes because I have an extremely flat foot that spills out on the side whenever I step down. I don't really have any kind of instep.
Wide.
Yeah. I've found that wide Columbias work really well for me. And I found a pretty decently priced pair that I like quite a bit that I've ordered a couple of times now.
I didn't like the Columbias as much, but they're a great shoe for their price.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, we need to look for y'all a shoe sponsor because y'all would be one, somebody needs to be putting some shoes on y'all's feet, testing them out. That's for sure. That's for sure. So what has been the most surprising equipment choice that you've had to make? You're like, I didn't think we were going to need one of these, or I didn't think, this was going to be so vital. What piece of equipment has been like that? That was it.
Ooh. If you look at many of our photos, you'll see that hats are incredibly important to us. They feel almost as important as the footwear, but a big part of it is because.
Oh yeah, look good. I got a hat on. Y'all looking good. Look good. Woo woo.
So I really like wool hats. I have a Borges and Scott wide brimmed wool hat that has been absolutely incredible. You want a hat that is either really resilient and doesn't crumble under pressure, or you can actually crush it nearly and it just retains its shape anyway and bounces back into place. The wool, I think, is great because it's temperature regulating. So even though it's wool, you'd think that you would just get really hot in the summer, but the heat tops out, whereas other hats, you'll just continue to get hotter. The wool stops at a certain point, so you never get too hot. And it won't soak through in the rain. The one that I have, at least, I can just get rained on pretty much all day, and the hat won't get wet. My head will stay dry. So I got a little umbrella sitting over the top of my body.
The 12-in-1 is a pretty
Imagine having a dolly that you got to change the dang bearings in because you've rolled so many miles. I mean, that's another Well, like, what kind of dollies do you use? Do you have a specific one, or is it just like whatever was there? That's what we're pushing.
Well, they're specially fabricated, actually. They've been welded to accommodate larger tires on the back.
They were 2-in-1 dollies when we got them, though, so they were made to sit up or down like that.
Yeah, they're just dollies that you can buy at Harbor Freight, except they've been cut up and remade so that, like, the ones normally your 2-in-1 dollies have these plastic casters on the back, which would be terrible to continue the walk with. And instead, now they have all the tires are no flats, they're just solid rubber tires. So the bearings will go bust many times more before the tire itself wears out.
So we
I
basically
love it.
got a lift and then added a piece of metal and attached larger tires on the back to make them much more capable.
I love it. I love it. Let's take a moment and change gears just for a second, okay? I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe that sometimes there are roadblocks that are spiritually put up against us to keep us from kind of accomplishing a certain task because maybe it's not ready yet or something. I don't quite know, right? I don't know why people don't get on the airplane. They get a precognition, don't get on the airplane, and then that's the one that crashes or whatever. I don't know. And so I don't know why we have troubles when we have troubles, but all I can do is embrace it, right? And just believe that that was meant to be in some kind of way and move on, right?
Ideally, that's not what's going on in this particular circumstance, but yeah, I'm not sure. Paige and I often feel like there always seems to be this path of least resistance, and we're always kind of trying to navigate our way through into that when we're on the walk, because otherwise you just end up banging your head into a brick wall over and over again, resisting the world as it presents itself to you.
Yeah, right. That's a great point. So what's it like to be, what's the philosopher guy that pushes the thing up the hill all day? I mean, I see pictures of y'all and videos of y'all pushing carts up the freaking hill all day. I mean, there's got to be twice as many uphill as there are downhills.
Sure feels like it.
Whatever's hurting most, that's always what feels like there's more of.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Because sometimes just holding on going downhill is hard and dangerous, and it's kind of tough. And then you got a lot of things to think of. If it's nothing more than I know it's going to rain for 3 days, so what am I going to do? Am I going to go walk?
Usually, yes.
Yeah, typically yes. Sometimes we'll hunker down for it if it's going to be extremely cold, but
yeah, that's
we've walked through pretty much every kind of weather that you can think of. I'm trying to think of.
I mean, there was a tornado and we stayed in the tornado shelter at the time, so we didn't technically walk through it, but
we got really fortunate on that one. A police officer had actually come to grab us off the side of the road in expectation for some incoming bad weather.
Wow. So tell me about what kind of reception you get from the local governments, the people, the sheriffs, the police officers, do people give you a great reception, or are you guys considered vagabonds?
I definitely expected a little more skepticism from like authorities especially, but they have been so kind and helpful, from officers and state troopers to town halls and mayors and all sorts of people have been helpful and hosted us. We've camped on the yard of the town hall. We've slept inside and outside of fire departments and in storm shelters and all sorts of places.
Yeah, we've been hosted by like a dozen mayors at this point, and even multiple police chiefs. In fact, just recently on this last segment, we were hosted by one of the state representatives for Louisiana, and prior to that, we were taken out to lunch and taken on a tour of the Capitol just after. We've got to shake hands with a lot of local government and state government, and it's been pretty cool, especially just to see that everybody's human at the end of the day. Like, especially when it comes to politicians, I think that we can get this idea in our mind about them. And it's not to say that like there aren't some with maybe worse intentions than there are others, but just that normally we paint a picture in our heads and we tell ourselves a story about what these people are like. When at the end of the day, they're still just people. They're still people like
Amen. Amen. I
yeah.
totally agree. So you guys have a mantra kind of common thing among your posts, among everybody that you got going on, thinking about the thought of being able to fix ourselves through training our mind or thought training, being able to see things in a different way. You have one post that says something to the effect of, "We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are." Right? I listened to that. I think it's absolutely amazing. Tell me more about your philosophy.
So on the back of our shirts, they say, not that you can see it, but it says, change the inside, change the outside. If you want to fix the world, you have to fix yourself. Oftentimes, people see a world that they're bothered by and they want to fix it through controlling it, externally. They want to legislate against certain practices or implement certain policies in order to create the world that they want. But there's so much more to it than that because our perspective is largely altered by the kinds of things that we subject ourselves to, the culture that we grow up in. And until we start manipulating our perspective and putting ourselves in the shoes of other people or working just towards certain forms of self regulation that will make us into a different person, we don't have the ability to realize how flawed our perspective can be. And so if we try to seek control over the world to make it into what we want, we could be paving the road to hell with good intentions. And I think that a lot of what we see is just that. Most people don't want to be bad people, they want to do good and be good. But in trying to do so, they end up um, seeking control over others in a way that really rubs people the wrong way, and they end up trying to control the other person back. Whereas, if you imagine a world in which everybody turned their attention inward to be as resilient and, let's say, indifferent, right, to the actions of other people, if they had the philosophy that your rights are, they basically extend as far as the end of my nose. You can get up to whatever you want to as long as it's not affecting anybody else negatively, then the world would naturally drift in a better direction. But in order to do that, we have to figure out how to train different kinds of thinking patterns. We need to figure out how to look at each other differently. And a lot of that comes through the kinds of mental tools that Paige and I talk to people about through our social media, which are really all based on a few different things. I mean, we source a lot of information from psychology or philosophies which have withstood the test of time, but it really leans into the fact that our brains change throughout the course of our life. Neuroplasticity describes the way that the circuitry in our mind is literally rewired based on the places that we're directing our attention toward and the things that we're doing with ourselves and the environments that we're subjecting ourselves to. So if you look at our logo, you'll see that there's a little brain with a bunch of neural connections inside of it looking outward toward this heart. We can train a more loving perspective and get along with each other differently if we're training our minds in the right way to do so.
I love it. I love it. So, is there a particular, like, I don't know, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but is there a 30-second lesson you could give to me and teach me like a basic thing that, like, if I think this way now, if I used, Torin's idea, maybe I could think another way. Is there some way you could help me, like with a beginner lesson real quick?
Sure. Um, did you like the dichotomy of control that we discussed earlier? I know we haven't brought it up in this particular video
100%.
yet.
100%. 100%.
So, in early Stoic philosophy, Epictetus had constructed what's now known as the dichotomy of control, where in the Enchiridion, this book that he made that was basically supposed to be a short little handbook that you could reference back to on one of the best ways to live your life, he begins with the dichotomy of control, which says there are some things which are within our control, and there are some things which are outside of our control. Within our control is everything that occurs internally, our opinions, our judgments, our perception, and outside of our control is everything else, the opinions of others, the judgments of others. It could be the country that we're born into, the family we're born into, our wealth or physical well being. Those things can often be outside of our control. And if we desire that the things which are outside of our control should be within our control, and we don't learn how to let go of that, we're always going to be a slave to our mind. So, one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is to learn how to let go of those things so that we can free ourselves psychologically. And one of the best ways, Paige was talking about this earlier, one of the best ways that you can do that is through meditation, because that is basically learning how to train your attention so that you can train it toward the things that are within your control and train it away from the things that are outside of your control. And you do that by focusing on something of little stimulation and then observing your thoughts as they populate naturally so that you can observe them objectively and not identify with them, figure out how to let go of them rather than be drugged along by them.
Kind of allows you to step away from your thoughts and see yourself as the viewer of them. You are not your thoughts. They are not inherently you. If you can see a judgmental thought and acknowledge, oh, that's a judgmental thought, I should let go of that idea, not cling to that, and not hold it as true. You can reframe your perspective in so many different ways.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm a very avid meditator. I have done it for several years. Meditation has changed my life dramatically. Would you tell me some of your best practices? Where do you go? How do you do it? How long? Tell me about that if you don't mind.
Well, I think that the standard advice is to implement things in progressive steps in order to produce lasting change. But honestly, I think one of the best things that a person can do for themselves, if they can actually make themselves do it, is to jump into the deep end of the pool and set aside a day or a few hours to meditate, because it takes such a long time to really reach the heights of meditation. Typically, people don't know what they're looking for. They can't figure out how to like see themselves as the witness to their thoughts rather than just as their thoughts. It takes a lot of work and time, even just to get to that point. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to do it for a really extended period of time. You come away from that feeling different, almost like you've been washed clean in a way. Um, when I do it, though, I would say for me, I really like some auditory focus. I don't know why, I just marry well with it. I like something that's like dripping water has really been one of the best things for me to meditate on. Just a little drip, drip, drip. But other times it doesn't really matter too much as long as you're moving your attention towards something that is of little stimulation. I mean, for all it matters, you can try to pinpoint the sensation that's in your left pinky toe and just see if you can place your awareness down there, a place that you don't usually focus on. What is it like to be over there in that left pinky toe? um, just so that you can learn how to maneuver that. I said earlier, attention is like the spotlight of your consciousness. If we can't figure out how to spotlight the right things and get the spotlight off the wrong things, then we're just going to be stuck inside of a very miserable mind that we're getting drugged to and fro by.
I was into meditation for a while before we met, but it wasn't until this period of time I was taking some time to myself and I meditated for 3 hours one day, 2 hours the next day, and 3 hours the next day. And I was intermittent fasting and eating like it might have been whole foods or vegan, somewhere in between those two. Eating perfectly, only consuming healthy things like reading and listening to philosophy on YouTube, stuff like that. And at the end of those 3 days, I felt like a completely different person, and it was day number 4 after that Torin proposed to me and we made it official. It can change you dramatically, and you especially see it when you dedicate so much time to it. I'm really grateful for taking that time.
I think for people who are aware, like if you meditate regularly, you might be able to read it on people, like where they're at psychologically in a different way that people who don't meditate have the ability to. What I mean by that, it's nothing like magical. It's that most of the time, our thoughts are very egocentric. We're focused on ourselves, what we're going to do. And it's especially true in contemporary society where we have this very dissatisfying exchange of like, I did this today. Oh, really? I did that today. Oh, yeah, I was thinking about buying this thing. Oh, yeah, I was thinking about buying this thing. And it just feels like you're trading selfish ideas when nobody's really invested in what the other person's going through. But when you like dissolve some of the harder edges of the ego because you've stepped away from those egocentric thoughts for a really extended period of time, like Paige is talking about, your thoughts come out differently. They come out more selflessly, they come out more loving because you're not so hyper focused on you and you finally have the attention to give to another person. Most of us don't have that attention to give anymore to another person. We're not empathizing with each other as well. I'm just old enough to remember what it was like to like have to call someone on the phone. You couldn't text them, and you always, if you ever interfaced with someone, you would communicate at least verbally. And people would knock on each other's doors if they were coming to visit rather than even necessarily call. And I feel like conversation happened at a totally different tempo at that point in time. People were, don't get me wrong, people have always been selfish and people have always had their problems. It was just in the age of overstimulation and social media and a market which is seeking to produce the worst kinds of desires in us, we're losing part of our humanity that we had to give to each other in the past that we don't any longer.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Page and Torin Rouse, the walking American couple. They are giving us some sage advice. They can't see me, but I can see them. And it's kind of wild, you know. I have been blessed by the time that we spent together, the smiles that they have when they're just sitting there, both of them individually and then just collective, the heart that just blows out of them. It's really neat to see a intellectually philosophically sage person that doesn't have a beard, right, and it's neat. It's neat being here in your presence and listening to you say the things that you're saying, because the things that you're saying ring as universal truths to me, right? I've been around a few years, and you're saying things without pointing to some dogma, without pointing to something that somebody else has to be. You're saying, hey, save your own world, fix your own world, right? Quit being critical of others and let's look more lovingly, mainly at ourselves. And then once we do that, then we're able to extend that love outward. Um, you talk about tough times being out there on the trail and, you know, things breaking down. You talk about doing this walk so that you could, you know, relearn to like people. You know, you talk about deciding in your own head, you know, what things are going to be and your reactions to them. You've got to have had the worst of the worst and the highs of the highs happen to you. What, tell me philosophically about a high you've been on. Paige just talked to me about days of meditation and then all of a sudden becoming, you know, enamored and engaged and married to this young man that she so fell in love with. You know, tell me, Torin, about one of your highs. You know, what's one of the high points of your life?
Hmm. I had this in life. You know, everything comes at a cost. To have a partnership, it comes at a cost. I This isn't necessarily about the walk, but after I had already hiked the Colorado Trail, and I had been spending a lot of time in social isolation, van camping in like national forests. And right before I met Paige, I just had a really good period of time to reflect for myself, by myself, and really work on myself for myself. You know, when you have another person there, even as much as they can benefit you because they can be a support for your healthy habits, you can also kind of, I don't know how to put it exactly, you can take out a little bit of your immaturity on them. Like you have someone to also like
Enable.
yeah, also enable you in some
Not
ways.
terribly unhealthy or anything.
And more than that, you have someone there just to focus on. It's another thing to give your attention to, rather than just give all of your attention on becoming the best version of yourself as you can. Um, all of our attachment in that kind of way, it's an impediment to self-realization to some extent or another. I mean, there are obviously gradations along this continuum, but a person who's absolutely free to commit all of their time to becoming the best version of themselves that they can put all of that focus on themselves inwardly. So right before I met Paige, I feel like I might have been in like the clearest headspace I've experienced in my life. Um, but of course, you know, I'll take the trade any day to have Paige in my life. It's just that I don't know. It felt so pure. I felt more than anything like because I didn't have the distraction of another person in my life at that point in time, I was just able to. Is that a is that a thumbs down emoji right there?
Yeah, where did that come from?
What is that?
I don't know. I don't know. That is it keeps doing it.
That's so weird.
Now, so I saw it do that when we were outside one time. When we were outside earlier, it was like the connection went bad or something, and there was a thumbs down emoji.
Mm.
It's almost like your camera saying the connection's bad and the thumb down emoji comes, if that makes sense. Because there's nobody here that can make a thumbs down. We're not online. There's nobody watching us or anything. You know what I mean?
Weird.
Yeah, that's Satan attacking us with a friggin' thumbs down button or something. You know, what the heck's going on? What?
Funny.
Oh, I love it.
But
I love it.
but yeah, that was a really high point for me. I don't think that it had like the same kind of elation that some of the best moments I've had with Paige have had, but it just came with a clarity that it really only is born of non-attachment. If that makes sense to you.
Oh, I get it. 100%. I love it. Thank you for sharing. That means a lot. I appreciate it. Right. It is wild that we have our best wilderness experiences when we're by ourselves and we don't have to worry about others. Right. In the army, some of your best times are in the foxhole, when nobody else is around, and you're pulling your own, you know. So I get it. I get it. I get it. So, hey, Torin and Paige, I really appreciate being here with, you guys being here with me. And I've enjoyed it so much. I would love to close out this session. And I would like, if you don't mind, just tell me how to get in touch with you guys, how to support you guys, and that kind of information before we close.
We have our website, walkingamericacouple.com. It's kind of a hub for connecting you to all of our other social media platforms. And it also has donation links for anyone who would like to support our content. And it has all of our written work all in one concise place. And Facebook is our primary platform. We post on there the most. And we also have YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, not so much anymore. We technically have TikTok.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you, everybody. Say wave bye, everybody.
Goodbye. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Will.